Genesis. Chapter 41. And at the end of 2 full years Pharaoh had a dream, and there he was, standing by the river. And there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine-looking and fat-fleshed, and they grazed in the reed grass. Then there came up after them 7 other cows out of the river, ugly-looking and thin-fleshed, and they stood beside the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly-looking and thin-fleshed cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed a second time. And there were 7 ears of grain, coming up on one stalk, fat and good. Then there were 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, that sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 fat and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and it was a dream. And in the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all her wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my sins today. Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he put me in custody at the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. And we both had a dream in one night, I and he, each of us had a dream with its own interpretation. And the young Hebrew man was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, to each one he interpreted according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it happened, Pharaoh restored me to my office, and he hanged the baker. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he had shaved himself and changed his garments, and he came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but there is no one who can interpret it, and I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream you can interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not of me, God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, In my dream, there I was, standing on the bank of the river. And there came up out of the river 7 cows, fat-fleshed and fine-looking, and they grazed in the reed grass. Then there came up after them 7 other cows, poor and very ugly-looking and thin-fleshed, I had never seen such in all the land of Egypt for ugliness. And the thin and ugly-looking cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. And when they had swallowed them, no one would have known that they had swallowed them, for they were still as ugly-looking as at the beginning. Then I awoke. And I saw this in my next dream, there were 7 ears of grain, coming up on one stalk, full and good. Then there were 7 ears, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, that sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dream is one dream, what God is about to do he has told Pharaoh. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years, the dream is one. And the 7 thin and ugly-looking cows that came up after them are 7 years, and so are the 7 empty ears scorched by the east wind, they will be 7 years of famine. This matter is just as I have spoken to Pharaoh, what God is about to do he has shown to Pharaoh. 7 years of great abundance are now about to come throughout all the land of Egypt. Then 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will consume the land. And the abundance will be unknown in the land because of that famine which follows, for it will be very severe. And as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out for a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. And let them gather all the food of these coming good years and lay up grain under Pharaoh's authority for food in the cities, and let them keep it. And let the food become a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land does not perish in the famine. And the word seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find such a man like this, in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God let you know all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my household, and according to your word all my people shall be ruled, only in the throne will I be greater than you. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried out before him, Bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, yet without your consent no man will lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and passed through all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 years of abundance the earth produced copiously. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which came upon the land of Egypt and put the food in the cities, he placed the food from the surrounding fields within each city. And Joseph stored grain in great abundance like the sand of the sea until he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. And before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for, he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's house. And he called the name of the second Ephraim, for, he said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty that came upon the land of Egypt came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. And there was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt became hungry, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, you shall do. And when the famine was over all the face of the earth, Joseph opened all the storehouses of grain and sold grain to the Egyptians, and the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. And all the earth came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the earth.